So Fox News continues its fascination with anything AOC related. This time, of course, her 70% tax plan on the rich. Now, that 70%, of course, is marginal taxation. That means anything over that margin, anything over $10 million, that is any dollar over $10 million made, is taxed at 70%. That's what actually marginal means. But as you're going to see, of course, in this segment on Fox News, with both Ainsley Earhardt and Michael Goodwin, they will not be talking about that distinction, and it will be for a reason. Let's take a look.
Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who wants the new Green Deal and Medicaid for all. I mean, Medicare for all.
70% tax.
Yeah, this is now what I call sort of the race to crazy land. Everybody on the left is acting as if there's no history here, that government can take all private property and redistribute it. It's the great redistribution race that they're in, and we're seeing it up and down the Democratic Party.
Really? Oh, that's interesting. Now, look, I wasn't aware that the left was urging the government to take away all private property and redistribute it. I mean, again, they're not going to come take your house and then give it to some poor person. No, that's not what they're doing. But if you listen to that guy, that's certainly what it makes it sound like, right? But in reality, no, we're not. What we are is we're asking for taxes on people who are incredibly wealthy, who make over a certain amount, to be taxed more so that we can actually use that money for things that help the majority of Americans. And it's not as if we haven't done anything like that before. We have. Now, here's the thing. How is it that using our tax money that we already pay into, right, for our healthcare, that, look, we're going to use healthcare at some point in our lives, right? How is paying in taxes to pay for that healthcare a horrible thing? In reality, government funded and government run healthcare systems actually do work better. They're more efficient, and they actually cover every single citizen. I mean, again, we already have an example, which is anybody over 65 is covered with Medicare. Medicare is cheaper, it's more efficient, and while it does have gaps in what it can do, there are current pieces of legislation out there that will actually fix those things. And look, a single-payer system, we have evidence from the other countries that do it. It's not as if this hasn't been tried before. Other countries do it, and they end up having actually better health outcomes for patients while costing the taxpayer a fraction of what we spend on healthcare here in America, which is for profit. Canada, we pay half of what Canada does per capita, which means per person, for healthcare. And most of us aren't covered, and most of us end up paying more. But again, these are talking points, as you can see, and they seem to be heading every scare tactic. Socialism, the history of where redistribution doesn't work. They're going to take your stuff and they're going to redistribute it, right? Well, first of all, I want everybody to ask those Nordic countries who seem to be doing quite well with a single-payer healthcare system and higher taxes on the rich, if that's such a terrible thing. But hey, I'm just getting to the fun part. In fact, here's where it starts. Watch.
How do they have so much support, though? Because when you hear they're going to tax 70% of your paycheck if Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez gets her way, how do they have so much support? 'Cause that's a lot of money for people to give back to the government.
I think a lot of it is ignorance. I frankly think American young people today are not being educated properly in schools. They don't know the history of our country. They don't know the history of other countries. They don't understand economics. Now, Ocasio-Cortez, she's charming and delightful in many ways. She got an economics degree from Boston University. And she clearly doesn't understand how the unemployment rate works. She said that it's low because so many people have 2 jobs. Now, how do you get an economics degree from a major college and not understand that that's not how the unemployment rate works? How is that possible? I think that's what we're seeing. Civics isn't being taught. So people don't understand government. They don't understand the economy. They don't understand how taxation and regulation.
A lot of people don't pay federal taxes, too.
Yes.
Michael, thank you so much.
Oh, I love that. I love that part. That's literally the best. And I love how they tack on the end here. Oh, most people don't pay federal taxes anyway. Yeah. Why do you think that is? Well, it's because, for one, they're too poor to pay federal taxes. That's what the majority is. And the second, of course, is Republicans love to cut taxes on the rich, but also they include as a breadcrumb the middle class. So that's why a lot of people end up not paying federal taxes. But I love how she shoehorns that in as if that's some sort of valid point. Most people don't pay federal taxes. Most of the taxes are paid for by the rich. Why do you think that is? Because they've got all the money. They've got all the money. That's why they pay all the taxes, or at least most of the taxes. And that's sort of the way that it's supposed to be in a progressive tax system, is the rich pay more. Shocker. That's kind of how it works. Wow, amazing. But I love the point. My favorite point here is, oh, people don't understand how taxes work. It's the ignorance. These people are just so ignorant. I mean, they don't understand how it works. They're going to take 70% of your paycheck. AOC, if she gets her way, she's going to take 70% of what you earn. Really? That's not what marginal taxes are. That's not what this is. And you are lying. Again, he either doesn't understand marginal tax rates, which again, the people who would see a 70% tax rate on their earnings are all multimillionaires, people making over $10 million a year. Do you know how many Americans that is? 16,000 Americans. But then again, look, everybody on that stage right there likely is a multimillionaire. So they're like, oh my God, they're going to take 70% of your paycheck, Ainsley. Yeah, it's because she makes probably $20 million a year as a host on Fox News. Oh, Jesus. That steel worker in Pittsburgh, however, that you think you're talking to, that guy ain't even getting close to $10 million a year. He's not going to be affected. So there's the irony here about talking about how uneducated, supposedly uneducated and ignorant AOC is. When Michael Goodwin, this guy, is banking on his audience being too ignorant to understand marginal tax rates. Well, guess what? They're actually not. A majority of Americans, yes, even Republicans, are saying, yeah, maybe we should tax the rich more. Weird. It seems like that is almost a very popular position, unless you're a millionaire. And AOC, of course, explained this already. She explained how marginal tax rates work. She said, a marginal tax doesn't mean all 10 million are taxed at an extremely high rate, but rather some of the top earners' income would be taxed at a higher rate after it passed a certain threshold. And as Vox pointed out, historically, and I love how he's like, oh no, historically, people don't understand the history of this country. No, the top brackets, look, America used to have more tax brackets, right? Before Ronald Reagan. And in those top tax brackets, people were taxed at extremely high rates, marginally, right? The top marginal tax rates were up to 91%. Look, that was during Eisenhower. So during the 50s and 60s and 40s, and even the into the 30s, we had incredibly high marginal taxes for the wealthy. So don't pretend that this isn't happening. And again, it was 70% under Presidents John Kennedy and Lyndon Johnson. So, no, don't pretend that this has never happened in the history of this country. It has. And people like Goodwin want you to forget about it. Look, the reason for this, of course, the reason that we're calling for marginal tax rates is not to punish rich people. It's not because we hate rich people and we want to punish them for being successful, right? And a lot of people end up getting their wealth from, inheritance anyway, which is why the estate tax exists. But hey, look, I don't have a problem with people making money. I don't have a problem with people being wealthy to a certain extent, right? But at the same time, taxing them, the reason that you have these high marginal tax rates to begin with is so that they don't hoard the money, that they don't take it out of circulation. And when you have low tax rates, that's what they do. They just hoard it. They take it and they don't use it. Whereas when you actually have higher marginal tax rates, to avoid paying that tax, they will reinvest in their company. They will invest in their workers. They'll give them higher paychecks. They'll give them raises. They'll give them bonuses. Or they'll invest in their own infrastructure for the company. They'll end up growing the company, which is better for America, adding more jobs. Things like that. It is investment. Whereas right now, you don't have that investment. They got another tax cut, and what did they do? They ended up giving themselves executive bonuses and putting that money into basically inflating their own stock. That's false stock value. The companies are not worth that much. They're just not. And so that's going to create, or is creating, a bubble. What do bubbles do? They burst. That is terrible news for the economy. That money is not doing any good going back into stock buybacks. So this guy is, of course, grossly ignorant, or more likely, as you probably figured out, he knows exactly what he's doing. And since he might be making more than $10 million a year, doesn't want his taxes going up. That is the economics of greed. Hey guys, hopefully you enjoyed that free video. Now I'm going to have to ask you a favor. Between the demonetization and the YouTube algorithm messing around with view counts, etc., we're having a hard time adjusting to the new YouTube reality, which is where you guys come in. See, we have a Patreon, patreon.com/TYTNation, set up to help us rely on you guys, the viewers, instead of big corporate ads. Look, you know the show. You know I'm not in favor of big corporations anyway. So help us transition away from relying on the ad model to pay the bills and sign up to be a patron, patreon.com/TYTNation. That goes a long way to help us keep the lights on. And you guys will know that you're supporting independent progressive media.